time that you remember how you solved a system of equation. In this case, when you have a three equation, equation one, and then equation 2, and then equation 3. And then you have a three equations. Somebody has the mic on, please turn it off. With the mic on, you don't make noise. Who's doing that? I have to tell this every time, you know. I'm tired of this. So you have three equations, and then you have three unknowns. You know how you can solve it, right? You have solved problems like this in your college algebra class. Then you also can solve this by a method called Gauss-Elimination method. What this method do, this method, what do you do? We form a augmented matrix. Augmented matrix is formed by just writing here, it's like, for example, 0x. So the coefficients is like row 1, row 2, row 3. You can put the row 1, the coefficients of equation 1 is 0, 2, 1. Is a pointer. So this is the equation. Like this is the equation here. This equation, you just put the coefficient of this equation in row 1. Right here. Then the coefficient of equation 2, you put in row 2. The coefficients of equation 3, coefficient and also the value after the equal sign. You put them here. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the laser pointer?
Good, sir.
Can, sir. Can, sir.
Okay. So then you call this a row 1. See, then you call this a row 1, and then a row 2, and then row 3. Now all we need to do right now, we have to like eliminate, replace all these numbers here with zeros. Somehow we have to manipulate this equation, and then we're going to get rid of 1 and replace that with 0, get rid of -1 and replace that with 0, and get rid of 1 and replace with 0. So we go through a simple addition and subtraction, or addition or subtraction of row, or interchanging the rows. So as we do that, you can see first process, we make this 0, and then you make the other one 2 zeros, and then you continue the process until you get all of them 0 like this. That's all you're going to do. Then once you are done with that, then you can easily solve this equation. So let's see how to do that. So this is like one way to do this. You may figure out other ways to do. You don't have to really follow this method. You don't have to really make this 0 first. You can do whichever you have to be very quick in your mind to do addition, and then see which one to add which one, and then you can see in your mind. Then later on you do the mathematics, and then make sure then you make one by one go to 0. Okay, the first step, we already have the augmented matrix here. This is the augmented matrix right here. So we're going to interchange row 1, row 2. The first operation is interchange row 1 and 2. And this is row 1, row 1, row 2, and row 3. Interchanging row 1, that means you are replacing row 2 with row 1 and row 1 with row 2. Okay. So after doing that, you will end up getting, after interchanging a row, you end up getting this matrix here. This matrix you can see 0, 2, 1, minus 8, which was in row 1, now is at row 2. 0, 2, 1, minus 8. And then 1, minus 2, minus 3, 0, which was row 2, now has become row 1. 1, minus 2, minus 3, and 0. Okay, what's the benefit of doing that? The benefit of doing that, you already made one of them to be 0. Okay. So you can simply interchange rows in matrix to do this operation. And then you also can add one row to another row. The next operation is you're going to add row 3 to row. You're going to add R1 row 1 to row 3. What was if you look here, row 3. You look at this is row 3, and then this is row 1. Okay, row 3 is minus 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is row 3. Let's put R3 here. And then you're going to add row 1. Row 1. Then plus row 1. Row 1 is 1, minus 2, minus 2, minus 3, 0. So if we add them, so what do you get? 3 plus 0 is 3. 2 minus 3 is minus 1. 1 minus 2 is minus 1. Minus 1 plus 1 is 0. So by doing that, you get 0, minus 1, 3. So this is, by adding row 1 to row 3, you're able to get this row. So what is the benefit of doing this? The benefit of doing this, you already made this. Earlier on it was minus 1, right? Now you have made this go to 0. So you just look for simple operations to do this. Don't do anything complicated. Okay, now you already established. Then you have just one more 0 to go. You have to make that 0. How are you going to do that? Now the next step is interchanging. The next step, you are going to interchange. You're going to interchange row 2 and row 1. That means you're going to replace row 2 with row 3 and row 3 with row 2. It's going to be like this. This is row 2. Row 2 is going to come here, and row 3 is going to go there. After doing that, after the interchange, and you can see here, this is what you're going to get. Row 2 is now row 3. Row 3 is now row 2. Okay, the reason for doing that will be evident very soon. So now we have brought forward the same matrix up here. Now the reason for doing the interchange is because after doing the interchange, if you multiply row 2 by 2 and add to row 3, and that will go to 0. See, it was 2 here, then after doing that operation, it will go to 0. To show that, see, R3 was 0, 2, 1, minus 8. So R3, 2 times R2. R2 times 2 is R2, R3. 2 times R2 is 0, minus 2, and then 6. If you add them up, you can get 0, 0, minus 1, minus 2, which is going to be this right here. So how long does it take to go through? Just about 10 minutes, right? When you do this, that's about the time it will take. So once you make all this go to 0, so you already made all this go to 0. So you're done. So next, what you need to do, you have to put coefficients back to the equation. So this was, one was coefficient of x, like in this case for the first row, x, for the first row, 1 was the coefficient of x, y minus 2 was the coefficient of y, minus 3 was the coefficient of z. And then, okay, so you, that's how you get this, you put back. So the first row, from the first row, you will get this x minus 2y minus 3z equal to 0 from the first row. From the second row, you will get, there's a 0x there. So 0x. So there's going to be 0x minus y minus z equal to 3. So 0x, so you don't put that, minus y, from the second row, minus z is equal to 3. From the third row, okay, you don't have x and you don't have y, coefficients are 0, so you have only minus 1, the coefficient of z. So it becomes minus z is equal to minus 2. So now directly you can find the value of z. Z is 2. You take z value and then you plug it inside here in the equation 2, we can solve for y. And then you get y is minus 5. Then you take z value and then the y value and then plug into equation number 1. You plug in the values that you obtain for z and y into the equation number 1, and then you solve it. You can solve the x value. So that's all to it. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, then I have just one more short one to go. Then after that we'll be done. So I'll go to the next one. Are you sure nobody has question here?
No,
sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, one more to go. This is also very short. The next one is called the Gauss-Jordan method. In Gauss-Jordan method, same kind of deal. First, you form the augmented matrix. So you know how to do that, right? Augmented matrix. Then from the augmented matrix, what you try to achieve here is you're going to try to achieve same thing as before. All this will go to 0. Try to make all this go to 0. In addition to that, you're going to also try to make all this go to 0. If you can do that, then at the end of the process, to solve for x, y, and z is very easy. You don't even have to do any mathematics. You can see the answer directly. Okay, and now the process is still the same thing. You interchange your rows, you do this, you do that. The thing is, it's like when you add, after making these things go to 0, for examples, after you make all this go to 0, and then still there's you need to make this go to 0, right? The process of making this go to 0 can also affect this to become non-zero again. So you have to be careful which row to add where. Otherwise, your effort will be gone. If you're not careful, you might end up again a non-zero number here. You might get 1 again here, then 2 again here. Then after that, you try to achieve all these zeros, and then you have to go and fix these things. So this is the one thing that you have to be alert of. So you have to do this with some thinking from your mind, then you execute your plan. So the first thing we do is same as before. Now you try to make all these things go to 0. We're going to try to make all these things to go to 0, 1, -1, and 1. So the first step, exchanging row 1 and 2, right? So row 1 become row 2. Row 2 become row 1. That's all. Now you add R1, R3. Now you think this is your row number 3. To this row, you add R1. Like 1 plus -1 is 0. -2 plus 1 is -1. -3 plus 2 is -1. 0 plus 3 is 3. Okay, the row that is affected is row number 3. Row number 1 is not affected. Okay. You guys, hope you can see that. Any questions? No questions? I can move on. Okay, now interchange row 2 and row 3. Now row 2 is here. Row 2, you bring it over here. So row 2 becomes row 3 now in this next one. And then row 3 becomes row 2. The reason for doing that, you can see that on the next tab. The reason for doing that is because after doing that, you can just simply add to row 3 2 times the row 2, and that will give you a 0. This is the same matrix that you saw on the side. I'm just bringing it up here. And then now to row 3, you're going to add 2 times row 2. And this is your row 3. You're going to 2 times the whole row here and add to row 3. 2 times 1 is 2, right? Sorry, this is row 1. This is row 3. Sorry, row 2. You're going to multiply the row 2 by 2 and then add to row 3. Row 1, row 2, row 3. Row 2, row 3, row 2 is 2 times the row 2 will give you 0, -2, -2, 6. R3 is 0, 2, 1, -8. If you add them up, when you get 0, 0, -1, -2. Okay, so you will put this into row number 3. The benefit of doing that is self-evident. We can see that all these things, the 0 for entry is achieved. So now we continue to move on, doing similar process for the other. So now we want to make all this go to 0, right? So the next step is row 1 minus 2 times row 2. So you're going to subtract the row 1 by 2 times row 2. So row 1 is row 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, -1, -6. 2 times row 2. So, okay, sorry. So when I'm writing this, I have to look at this row here. I have to look at this here. I'm going to do the operation on this. So the first row is 1, -2, -3, 0. Now 2 times row 2. This is row 2 I'm talking about. You know, it's row 1, row 2. 2 times the row 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times -1 is -2. 2 times -1 is -2. 2 times 3 is 6. Then you add them. 1, 0, -5, 6. -5. So, okay, sorry, it's minus. I'm adding it. You know, it's supposed to be a subtraction. It says here subtract. See right here, subtract. So subtract. 1 minus 0 is 1. -2 minus -2 is also 0. -3 minus -2 is -1. 0 minus 6 is -6. So that is going to go to row 1. That's what is row 1 minus 2 row 2. Okay, what's the benefit of doing this? You've achieved a 0 here. Okay, the next step, some of them it might be too easy to do. The next step, we are doing 2 things together. We are doing 2 operation together. Row 1, row 2, subtract row 3 from row 2. Then you subtract row 3 from row 1. Okay. So row 2, so row 2. You can just look at there, look from here. R2 minus R3. So this is your row number 2. You're going to subtract row 3. So 0 minus 0 is 0. Minus 1 minus 0 is minus 1. Minus 1 minus minus 1 is 0, 0. 3 minus minus 2 is 5, right here. Okay. Next, subtract from row 1, row 3. Okay, this is row 1 again, and then you're going to subtract row 3. This is row 3. 1 minus 0 is 1. 0 minus 0 is 0. Minus 1 minus minus 1 is 0. Minus 6 minus minus 2. So just like minus 6 plus 2, so it's minus 4. Okay. So after doing all this, you can see easily the zero. So you have to look at, before doing this, you might be wondering, how do you know that I'm supposed to do that? You're supposed to, in your mind, you're supposed to see which one can I add to which one, which row multiplied by what, add to which row is going to make that go to 0. You have to figure that out in your mind. Then you do the operation. After achieving all this, and this is your equation, so you've come up with this final equation here. As you can see very clearly, after if you multiply through this each equation by minus 1, multiply through each row by minus 1, this row multiply by minus 1, sorry, this one there's no minus here, it's plus 1, you don't have to multiply by anything. But because there's a minus 1 here, we want to multiply by minus 1 through this row to get rid of the minus sign. So you get 0, 1, 0, minus 5. Now you multiply row 3 by minus 1 to get rid of this minus sign. So you multiply this 0, 0, 1, 2. 0, 0, 1, 2. You really don't have to do that, but if you just want to keep all these things positive, okay, you want to keep all this positive. Once you can keep all this positive, just by looking at it, and now you can say x is minus 4, and then y is minus 5, and then z is 2, right? Okay, that's all to today. Any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
You learn 2 concepts today. Tomorrow we will do one more topic, and then Monday